Hi everybody, welcome back. We are still talking about how to form visual groups with our shapes today, and we are going to be talking about the always try to do's. So let's hop in. So the first rule for the always try to do's is to ensure that all your shapes are aligned to each other and at least one other element on the slide. Okay. So what does this look like? Well, first let's talk about what it doesn't look like. And it doesn't look like this. So here we've got, again, maybe not the best use of shape choices. These titles aren't aligned, and because they've got, well, they used three different distinct shapes here. You've got different shapes here. You've got these triangles, and you've got like these unaligned things. So this slide could be fixed very easily. You would just kind of pick maybe group 1, group 2, group 3. You would maybe remove these extraneous other shapes that you don't need and maybe line up the text and maybe all of these repository names. Okay, maybe you want to maybe center align it and center align those. Make sure that these two would be evenly distributed in between these spaces. There's a lot of things that could be done to fix this up, but the point is that every object should be aligned to another object on a slide, or at least one text element, and none of these seem to be. So here we go. Here's some examples of some templates that did this really, really well, with some nice visual elements too. So okay, you have this map slide here, and everything within the map is lined up to the distance between these edges here. You have the bottom of your text shape here. The delineation for the page is really nicely lined up to the subtext, and the header fits within that visual space. So really nicely done. You've got group 1, group 2, group 3, and group 4 in terms of hierarchy. Well done. Over here, you've got your graphic element. This is one visual group, but we can understand that the hierarchy is still reading. This one is the most important. It's delineating the space underneath it. Those borders are respected, and all of these elements are kind of aligned within that space, right? So that looks great. Same with all these other elements. So even here, you've got evenly distributed shapes with text titles, and they kind of follow up along with the arrow. Actually, the arrow, it does work, but it would work better if it was the same angle as this line here. Everything else seems to line up. So this is alignment and shapes done really well. So each of the objects aligns not only to one thing, but at least another object on the slide as well. Okay. But when I'm talking about alignment, I'm talking about edge alignment. So what is that? What does that mean? So let's say I have my text box and my shape and my icon and my picture, okay? I want all of these elements to line up. So what does that mean? Well, it's going to mean that the edge of my text box is going to line up with the edge of this text box. Actually, this E could be touching this line here. And then my text box is going to just graze the top of my circle, which is also going to graze the top of the bounding box of my icon. And the title here is going to line up with my image. That's what I mean by edge alignment. It's the edge of the object or the edge of the bounding box of the object. Edge alignment. So we did a video about text alignment, so the left align, center align, and right align. Never ever use justify, please just don't do it. You can do the same thing with shapes. So you have your left aligned, right aligned, bottom aligned, top aligned, right? All of these things are all kind of applicable to shapes and other elements within your visual field as well. So there's a bunch of tools for that help you do this. In your shape formatting ribbon, or even if you right click on your format and hit align, all of these different alignment tools are available to you. Just use them. Next rule, you always want to apply repetition and consistency in your shapes. Let's see what it looks like. Give you an example. Let's say I have this rounded rectangle box and I want to use this across my slide, but then I start changing the shape. Now, you'd think that these two, because they share a color in the outline, that they're the same, but these two shapes are no longer the same. This is a different shape. If you're going to use rounded rectangles, for example, keep the shapes consistent. It's the edge this edge, it might not look like much, but the angle of this edge has to be consistent for your presentation to look clean. Overall, this poster doesn't look that bad, right? It's okay, right? So we have colors that pop, the palette is all right, but they're using a weird gradient in the top text, which I'm not a fan of, and even down here. But the thing that throws off the poster and the cleanness of the poster is that all of these angles are different. They're all different shapes. It takes away from the presentation cleanliness and the overall readability of this poster. If all of these shapes were aligned, it would work a little bit better. The last one, and this applies to shapes, to text, to everything, and it's going to be our overarching principle in everything that we do, is keep it simple and keep it clean. Be merciless with your keeping it simple, because it's one of the most difficult things to do. We want everybody to know everything all the time, right? So let's take a look at this slide. This is a graphic that I've seen often enough, and overall it doesn't look that bad, right? You've got a pretty attractive palette. Maybe the pink is, the contrast between the pink and this black isn't great, but overall it's not bad. That said, you've got 6 different points here, and you can't tell which one is more important because there's grouping, but there's no hierarchy within the groups. Maybe it would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, but it's still hard to say, it's hard to read. So I took my hand at cleaning up that same presentation and presenting that visual story this way instead. So I put the title as the most prominent piece because those are the things, the common core fundamental shifts, right? And when we want to implement it in a curriculum design, well, here's our points. You have a little bit more delineation here, and I used a software called PictoChart to make this happen, but I did this very quickly, so you can already see that my circles kind of had a couple snacks along the way, on the way down, and got a little more tubby as it got near the bottom. We want to keep our shape dimensions the same, which I didn't do here. And you'll also notice that for this shape, I could have moved these 2 circles out a little bit so that the text would all be aligned. So that's a little error there, and over here too, the text should also be better aligned. That said, with those small improvements, from what it was before to what it is now, I think this delineation is a little bit more clear and there's a bit better use of white space. Okay, let's take a look at this slide. Keeping it simple is what was done here. They picked a consistent heading and subheading, same kind of graphics, it's nicely distributed, the space is clear, and one little thing that they didn't do is that they didn't align their text boxes here, but everything else seems to work pretty well. And outside of the 4 lines instead of 3 lines, get away with it, you know, just to keep it consistent and centered. I'll let it slide. So well done. Let's go back into our very favorite project changes slide and see how we've progressed in terms of cleaning it up. So remember, we brought in the borders and we aligned the text and we picked our color palettes. And now we want to talk about removing those extraneous shapes. We had different icons showing this. We had those different icons for different people. They were different sizes. Those didn't need to be there because they weren't meaningful. So I've removed those. I've increased the size of these little groups over here, and I've changed the color to something that works on both backdrops to draw attention to the eye, and I've aligned them. So arguments could be had to put this into a circle or some other shape here, but I wanted to keep it simple, and I think this tells the story. It's not the most attractive design. I'm not exactly happy with this actually, but it does remove the clutter. It removes the visual clutter that was on the slide before. Okay. Same here. So we went from this slide to this one to grouping it visually with colors. But one thing that we also used was the shape elements. So before in our legend, the colors weren't popping because there was no outline to make a stark contrast between the white and the colors inside. So now all the shapes have consistent borders and colors. And whenever you are applying borders or outlines, you want to make them the same width. You want to use the same patterns again and again, right? So just like you're using the same shapes, you want to make sure that the outlines and borders of the shapes are all the same across your page. And that's it. That's all I've got for now. Thanks for listening. Like and follow if you like more. Bye.